Good evening and welcome to the Free West Media YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to our channel before, please do so immediately and don't miss any of our uploads. Now, I've just come across an extremely interesting letter written by a founder of the Black Lives Matter movement to Joe Biden, and she is now demanding payback from Biden because she says that it's only thanks to Black Lives Matter that Biden got as many votes as he did, and in the event that he becomes president, which seems to be highly likely, they are demanding now that he follows a so-called black agenda, and that he would then have to implement their policy. Now, let me just get you this letter up here quickly. It's a very interesting document. Okay, let's have a look. Well, there you go. Yes, it says, Dear President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. And then it goes on. And it says in the second paragraph, without the resounding support of black people, we would be saddled with a very different electoral outcome. In short, black people won this election. Alongside black-led organizations around the nation, Black Lives Matter invested heavily in this election. Vote and organize became our motto, and our electoral justice efforts reached more than 60 million voters. We want something for our vote. We want to be heard and our agenda to be prioritized. We issue these expectations not just because black people are the most consistent and reliable voters for Democrats, but also because black people are truly living in crisis in a nation that was built on our subjugation. So there you have it. The Black Lives Matter wants to pull the strings, as it were, in any new Biden administration. And I must confess to my ignorance, I didn't know who this person was who signed the letter. She is one Patrisse Cullors, I think. I don't know exactly how to pronounce her name. I suppose you could say in a French way, Patrisse Cullors or something like that, but I doubt whether that is the way she pronounces it. It's probably just Patrisse Cullors. The Patrisse is also fairly peculiar spelling, not exactly your average Patrisse as it is normally spelled in French. It's actually a man's name, although she also has some exotic gender identity, apparently. But now, Patrisse, she is not only somebody who is a founder member of Black Lives Matter, she is also apparently a trained Marxist theorist. At least that is what she claimed in an interview in 2015. I'll just show you what she looks like. Here's Patrisse Cullors. And in that particular interview, which was, it's referred to on the website blackhammer.org, she says that the leaders of Black Lives Matter, quote, actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia, in particular, are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on ideological theories. Now, apparently, Patrisse has a mentor, and his name is Eric Mann. And it so happens that Mr. Eric Mann is he's not only a Marxist but also a former member of the Weather Underground, which is classified by most law enforcement agencies in the USA as a domestic terrorist movement, or it used to be a domestic terrorist movement. And so, the question can be asked, is Black Lives Matter a Marxist movement? Given that, as Patrisse Cullors says, she's a trained Marxist, and she's very much, we are super versed. She's super versed on ideological theories, and by that she means Marxist theories, or another term that is used, critical theory. That's the cultural Marxist branch of Marxism, from the Frankfurt School from Germany that then emigrated to the United States as the Second World War was breaking out. People like Herbert Marcuse and Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer, they made up the Frankfurt School, and they developed this notion of critical theory. So this is going to be extremely interesting to see how these trained Marxists who are so versed in Marxist theory, how they are going to handle old Joe Biden once he becomes president of the United States, and how quickly the US is going to become some kind of Marxist state where the precepts of cultural Marxism will be applied and implemented. Although I suppose you could argue that a lot of the principles of cultural Marxism are already being applied in America. If you look at at feminism and the whole gender movement, LGBTQT, etc., it's all part of this identity transforming and undermining movement as formulated by leading cultural Marxists or critical theorists in the 1960s. And it might then become a case of the tail wagging the dog, with Black Lives Matter issuing these ultimatums to a new Democratic administration under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and demanding funding for their movement, as well as the application of Marxist or cultural Marxist policies in at least some areas, and maybe some geographical areas as well. But they're also talking about black liberation, and I think they are also thinking of a kind of an Afro-Marxist revolution in the United States, such as we've seen in some African countries, under people like Kwame and Nkrumah in Ghana, and Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, where whites will be targeted specifically for expropriation and being made into second-class citizens. So I suppose, it's this kind of policy could be applied in at least some of the blue states in the US, or some areas where the Black Lives Matter have already created some kind of a liberated zone, as they have in Portland, Oregon, and in Seattle, Washington. So I must say, I was highly surprised to read all of this stuff. You know, I thought people, it was sort of hyperbole that people were saying that, you know, BLM is a sort of a Marxist influenced movement. I thought it was more of a kind of a black identitarian movement and a black nationalist movement, but it seems then, you know, reading up on Patrisse Cullors and her comrades, I think you could call them comrades, they are very much adamant that they are pushing an explicit Marxist socialist agenda, and they are making these demands on Joe Biden and his administration, or his future administration. So let's see how Joe is going to react to all of this, and whether he's going to bend to their demands. But given the fact that he's, I mean, in the letter, they actually state that both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have already acknowledged that there is systemic racism in the USA. So they will have to move on that issue. And of course, that opens the door for this kind of cultural revolution that has to take place in the USA in order to liberate the society from systemic racism. And systemic, yes, what that would entail then, the kind of a transfer of wealth and maybe raising taxes on white people or people with white privilege and so on. It could get to be quite radical, and it, you know, the US could become one of the most radical socialist societies internationally. They could be, the USA could become a kind of a second Cuba or a Venezuela or a you know, France also went through a period of kind of socialist, communist rule in the early 1980s, when there was 20% inflation and the currency lost a lot of its value, unemployment rose, and a lot of the capital, leaked from the country. So let's see how this whole thing plays out, and let's watch how Joe Biden responds to Patrisse Cullors, and also how the whole BLM movement is going to gain in strength now that it has, you know, the ear of Washington, and where Washington and BLM are more or less aligned in their striving and endeavor for a form of social revolution in the USA. Well, thank you very much for watching this, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and you know, we'll go more deeply into some of these matters in future videos. Thanks for watching.